Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for being with us today. On January 1st, the city of Cleveland implemented new rules for street parking downtown and in Ohio City, extending the hours for paid parking and getting rid of free weekend parking, for the most part. Prior to this, street parking was free after 6 p.m. on weekdays and always free on weekends. Now, Ohio City will follow mostly the same schedule, with Sunday parking remaining free. Beyond this, the price to park is now higher, with additional increases possible in special event zones. City officials say the goal is to improve turnover and availability in high-demand areas. Some residents and business owners, however, have raised concerns about the added cost for evenings and weekends and potentially special events. The changes come as downtown activity continues to rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic. According to Downtown Cleveland Incorporated, foot traffic and visitor activity reached more than 90% of pre-pandemic levels in 2023. Business travel is gaining momentum too, up 7% last year, and bringing nearly $200 million in revenue to Cuyahoga County. So how will these changes shape daily life downtown, and what might they mean for Cleveland's future economic development? That's what we're talking about today. Joining us for the conversation, we have Matt Moss, Senior Strategist of Thriving Communities with the City of Cleveland. Matt, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
We also have Lucas Reeve, Senior Advisor with the City of Cleveland. Lucas, we appreciate the time.
Good morning.
And we also have Sam McNulty, owner of Market Garden Brewery and Nano Brew Cleveland. Sam, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it very much, and we will get into the conversation now. So as we get into this, we want to start with Lucas. Can you walk us through the parking changes that took effect on January 1st in downtown and Ohio City?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it. And I'd love to kind of maybe start from a place of what the strategy looks like and why this is important. I think, number one, we're looking to ensure that there is reliable and predictable parking available for folks where and when they need it. The second thing we're looking to do is be able to take increased revenue from the changes in parking policy and be able to reinvest that back into neighborhoods across the city in mobility and safety-related investments. Some of the changes that have rolled out, as you noted off the top, are a base rate increase to $1.50 per hour for the first 2 hours. That's up from $1 downtown and 50 cents and 75 cents across the neighborhoods, as well as extending hours into the evening to 10 p.m. So currently, or previous to the changes, we had been enforcing paid parking from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m., so now we're extending till 10 p.m., and then also on weekends downtown and on Saturdays in Ohio City. The other thing that we've done, and this is based on a lot of feedback from users since we rolled out Park Mobile, is to allow for the extension of sessions up to 4 hours. And so we heard from a lot of folks that 2 hours is just not enough. And so now for the first time, folks can extend up to 4 hours on a progressed pricing structure.
And Park Mobile, as you mentioned, that's the app that people can use to pay for the parking on the new smart meters that are available in downtown Cleveland and Ohio City in those areas. So can you talk about how the smart meters with Park Mobile made this possible?
Yeah. So, there's two ways now to pay for parking. You can pay for parking on the app, the Park Mobile app, which is incredibly easy to use and convenient. We also still accept cash, and folks can pay by credit card as well at pay stations across the city that are conveniently located close to on-street parking. And then I think really the one thing we've been sharing with a lot of folks is that as we removed all of the meter heads across the city, both in downtown and Ohio City, really the only thing you can measure with a meter is how many quarters are in there. And so as we move to Park Mobile and the pay stations, it really allows us to collect data and be able to make much more thoughtful and intentional decisions in the future about how we manage our parking.
Now, Lucas, you touched on this. Matt, I'll ask you, though, too. Can you reiterate the main goals behind extending the paid parking hours and eliminating the free weekend parking for the most part in the downtown Cleveland area?
Yeah, so and we've communicated this at community meetings, online with businesses, in one-on-one conversations, that in high-demand parking areas like downtown and the near west side, also in parts of University Circle, generally speaking, people want parking to be convenient, available, and ideally free. So that's the trifecta. In areas where there's a lot of destinations, businesses, events, locations people want to go and they want to get to in a car, you can generally only have two of those three things. And price is the best tool that we have to make sure that there's generally a space available when people arrive at a destination or arrive proximate to where they want to go. And so one of the biggest frustrations we've heard, this is going back to 2023 when we first passed legislation to allow more dynamic, more demand responsive pricing and to implement the Park Mobile system itself, was that I can't find parking. When I come downtown or when I come to Ohio City, when I go to a destination, the street parking's full. And I can't find a space. And so people circle the block. They if they're parking or looking to stay for a short trip, they often have to then park off street or park farther away. And so our goal is for convenience and availability. So convenience means that it's close to where you want to go. Available means when you get there, you can usually find a space or two. And what we see across cities that have implemented similar programs, they generally shoot for between 80 and 90% occupancy. So that means out of 10 spaces on a street, there's 1 or 2 available. That's the sweet spot. And that's our primary goal. Lucas mentioned our secondary goal. To the extent that we have additional revenue, we're putting that back into the streets and back into people's neighborhoods.
And this is a question both for Matt and Lucas, whoever feels most well suited to answer it. You mentioned what you hear from people about it. So how did you acquire that feedback? You're getting the data from the smart meters. You're saying people are saying this. So how did you acquire that feedback? And are you also talking to business owners and stakeholders as well when you decided to implement these changes?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and I can pass it off to Lucas as well. I think what we've heard over and over again is this need for balance. We hear from business owners who say, my customers, my employees, whomever, they can't park because on the street where it isn't metered or if it hasn't been metered yet, there's people that are parked there for days at a time. They could be, we've heard everything from residents to Airbnb guests to employees who park and then hop on the bus to go downtown because it's free to park in Ohio City on some streets. That's a challenge. We hear from residents saying like, well, this is where I park, and I park in front of a business, or I park in a mixed-use commercial district, and that's, I know I live above these buildings, and that's also my parking. And so people feel a lot of ownership around the spaces on the street. And so whether it's been in in-person meetings, we've heard, I remember going back to 2023, 2024, when we were first rolling out Park Mobile on streets like Lorraine and West 25th, the commercial main streets in Ohio City. I heard from residents that saying, wait, you're not charging in the evenings? That's when it's busiest in this neighborhood. That's when we need parking to be available and for it to turn over the most. And so we're hearing it all, and we're striving for balance.
Yeah, I think I'll only just double down on what Matt said and express that, we spent a lot of time meeting with business owners, with residents, with folks that own businesses and have staff that need to, have access to parking. And I think what you're seeing here is a plan that's rolled out that is endeavoring to be more balanced, more equitable, but really taking a lot of different stakeholder input into account as well. And I think, we were talking earlier about data and how important that is to us being able to collect data and make future decisions. We want to be able to make smart decisions in the future, not only with the data that we can collect, but also with the conversations that we're having. It's really important that all of the changes are people-centric, and we're endeavoring to push closer and closer towards an on-street parking system that works for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sam, you're a business owner. You own multiple businesses on West 25th Street in Ohio City. So does that hold true for you? Did you feel like you got an opportunity to share your perspective on these changes before they went into effect?
So short answer, no. I wasn't consulted at all about this. However, I will say my background, coincidentally, is in city planning. I attended Cleveland State University for planning, design, and development, just up the block here. Charging for parking is a good thing. Like, we definitely need to. I'm glad we're extending the payment period into 10 p.m. because what that does is that creates churn. So instead of, I lived for 15 years on 25th Street, right above Third Federal Bank, and I had neighbors in my building that would tell me they would drive in from their jobs on Friday at 6 o'clock, leave the car sitting in a on-street space until Monday morning, and the fact that the parking was not charged, that space was just basically they were squatting on a space that should have been churning all weekend and providing access to the businesses. So I'm very glad that we're charging for parking and doing it till 10 p.m. I would love to see the rates lowered. It is a regressive tax on accessibility to the neighborhood. However, I'm sure there's ways we could work with the city and say let's make it really accessible, because the whole idea of parking is we want people to come visit, patronize the businesses, go about their lives. So we want to make it Ohio City as accessible as possible. So we want to lower barriers to entry.
Do you believe then, as you were saying, in terms of it creating churn, that will positively impact the businesses in the Ohio City area?
Absolutely. So if one space turns over multiple times throughout the day and evening, it frees up. And to your point, there's accessibility. So if it's 80% full, there's always a space you can pull up, do your shopping, go to the restaurant, the bar, whatever, and then head off.
Now, there are people who have been posting on social media, some residents in the downtown Cleveland and Ohio City areas who are not happy about this. They've expressed concern that it might discourage people from visiting downtown in Ohio City. So, Matt, I'll ask you, is that something that you're monitoring in any given way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two main points I want to make on that topic specifically. One is that what we hear, again, going back to what I said earlier, we have heard in the past and continue to hear that I can't find parking, and that itself is a barrier to people coming downtown. We've heard that in to some extent too in Ohio City, and so we all pay for parking in various ways. Even if it is free, the city still has to maintain that street. We still get asked to fix the sidewalk. We still get asked to fill the potholes, pave the road. And so whether we're paying at the meter or we're paying in some other way, there's always a charge for parking, whether it's obvious or not. And so I think that that's the trade-off, and that speaks to the balance we're trying to seek, in that this is a tool that we haven't yet leveraged to the fullest extent we can to provide that service to people. Of like Sam just said, when you show up in a car, you should be able to find a spot, and that's the way we can do that with price. I think the other point too is we hear around accessibility and coming downtown, coming to Ohio City. Parking and driving is a dominant way. It's a very popular way people come to the city of Cleveland, or they move about the city of Cleveland. But we also have residents and visitors and others, employees, people who interact with the city that want to walk, want to bike, want to take transit. And charging for parking in and of itself is a small way that we can make the city more accessible for all road users. But again, using that revenue in a smart way to make those improvements as well will also help. So we hear from people all the time, mostly about driving, because we're an auto-oriented city. But I think what the mayor has made clear in his first term and going into his second term is that we're committed to providing options for everyone to get around. We like to say that we're an accessible city, a 15-minute city via car. That box is checked, and so our focus right now is on elevating those other modes to become as accessible as we can, however you choose to get around or into Cleveland.
I want to remind our audience that we are talking about parking changes in downtown Cleveland and the Ohio City areas. If you want to be a part of that conversation, you can call us at 866-578-0903. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org. Now, Matt, you just mentioned accessibility. So, Sam, particularly for your situation, can you tell me what parking options look like for your patrons? Do you have issues in terms of accessibility at the moment?
So right now, I think Ohio City is definitely open for business and accessible. We are very concerned about the loss of parking when the bus-only lanes that are proposed. So we're looking to work with RTA in the city to have a discussion, maybe some compromise on the bus-only lanes that are going to remove parking from West 25th Street. But thankfully, we have the large West Side Market District lot right behind the West Side Market. So that's a huge asset for the neighborhood. And that's really the reason that district can thrive the way it does. Is there's a lot of local support from people that can walk or bicycle or take public transit to Ohio City. But the reality is, there's a lot of people coming in from all over the region to the West Side Market, to the restaurants and the bars and coffee shops. So that parking is tremendously important. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that issue that you mentioned there with the bus lanes and proposed changes that may be coming in the future, that is something we hope to talk about here in a future episode here on The Sound of Ideas. So we do hope to have that conversation.
Awesome.
And as we stay focused here on the parking issue for the moment, I want to ask you what your neighboring business owners are feeling about the parking changes. Have you had conversations about that?
Quite a few, yes. And I think most of the neighborhood feels the same way. Like, we want more parking, but we want it to churn. Hence, we're very supportive of city planning and the move to charge for parking. Yeah.
Okay. Lucas, you mentioned the revenue that's coming from this. Matt, you mentioned the revenue that's coming from if there is additional revenue that is created. Lucas, can I ask you, can you talk to us about some of the specific plans if there is additional revenue that then happens? What might happen with that money?
Yeah, so we're working on putting together legislation now that would help us to create a fund that would be dedicated to safety and mobility enhancements across the city at the neighborhood level. We know that these are things that residents are asking for. These are things that help make neighborhoods safe and vibrant and enjoyable places to be. These are things like speed tables, enhanced crosswalks, better bike lanes, better lighting, things like that that we know are critically important at the neighborhood level. And we want to be able to take the revenue that we're receiving from on-street parking and be able to reinvest it in that way across the city.
Now, this is something that was mentioned as well, is there are residents in these areas that had previously had access to free parking at different times. So, Matt, I'll ask you, in terms of the changes for the everyday residents in these areas, where there is going to be extended parking hours and, no longer free access on the weekends, are there exemptions or discounted rates or any way to accommodate those people who live in those areas?
Yeah, the short version is that we do have a residential permit parking program now that's in effect on, I think the last time we checked, there's about 5 zones across the city that have residential permit parking. It hasn't been updated or modernized really in a couple decades at this point, and just last week we were working with Councilman Austin Davis and others to figure out how we can use this new technology system to provide a more modern residential permit parking program. But I will say, especially in neighborhoods like Ohio City, the total number of streets that are actually metered, we're really sticking to the commercial districts for now, where we've again heard from various stakeholders that this parking doesn't turn over. With the winter we've been having, we've been able to go out and really document that too, with cars that have just been covered in snow for several days in a row that they haven't moved, and these are cars that are parked in front of businesses like Rising Star over on 29th, for example, where again we hear from people who show up or who run these businesses say like, that parking needs to be available for my businesses. So there are quite a few number of streets that are going to remain the way they are, the way they've always been, and that's residential parking for those who don't happen to have off-street parking if it's available. Other options are there. There's what this system allows us to do is and right now we're adjusting rates. Last time we adjusted rates by my check was around April 2015. So it's been about a decade or so. So we're pretty much adjusting for the rising costs of just everyday living in terms of adjusting these rates to be commensurate with what they really have been in the past in terms of the value that the city gets out of that revenue in order to, again, maintain the system, maintain the city. But we'll be looking towards the future, again, like other cities are doing. We're following their lead in terms of how they adjust price, not just across the city, but in specific areas or even specific zones. Cities like Columbus even, or other bigger cities like San Francisco, Philadelphia, what they do is they adjust price. San Francisco adjusts their price every quarter, and they do that based on demand and use. And so using the system, like Lucas mentioned earlier, because we're collecting so much more information about where people park, where it's busiest, where it's not, we can see policies like how long you can park, the price you pay, depending upon what time of day it is or during special events. Those types of things can all change. And so in the future, it's very possible that we'll see prices come down or allow sessions to be extended even longer because we're collecting more information and can be smarter about what we charge and where we charge to, again, create that balance.
Let's dive into this dynamic pricing piece of this for just a minute here. So this is something that's kind of a buzzword right now. We've seen dynamic pricing talked about with companies like Amazon that will adjust pricing based on where you are geographically, and that's not something that has necessarily been very well received when people have learned this information. Now the city is saying they're coming out front and saying we are going to be using dynamic pricing in different ways. So Lucas, explain to us how that dynamic pricing piece will work when it comes to the parking meters.
Yeah, I think it's really picking up off of what Matt just shared and being able to use data thoughtfully to make decisions on a zone by zone basis. That's what many of our peer cities are doing. I think it's a unique way as we continue to get feedback from folks about what their parking experience is on the ground with the new policy being implemented. It's a way for us to start problem solving and being able to think about new ways to help address acute issues that come up. And I think, right now we've been putting a lot of work into special event on-street parking. So these are zones around the Gateway District and Brown Stadium where on event days, folks will have increased access and availability to parking on street that'll be at a higher rate, $8 per hour. But they'll have increased accessibility to those spaces. And then, as Matt mentioned, we can also look at being able to have other streets where parking sessions can extend beyond 4 hours, where parking sessions might be at a lower rate, just to help identify zones that are less used, but could be great places for people to park that have unique needs.
Well, from a management perspective, for people who don't know the answer to this, I'm raising my hand here, myself included. Previously, when there have been special events happening in the city, you would see a sign saying you can't park at a meter during these hours. So will that be different now? And why was that the case in the first place anyway?
Great question. Yeah, so it will be a little bit different now. A big part of the reason why parking was prohibited on certain streets is really just a matter of public safety, to be able to have the ability for folks to move in and out of those districts that are seeing a significant volume of folks that are attending whatever event is going on. But we've gone through a pretty deep analysis of a street by street analysis of where we could free up more parking spaces to have another option for folks beyond, parking in an off street garage or lot or parking further away and walking. Can we create some more spaces that are close by to the Gateway District or Brown Stadium for folks to use? And so those changes will be rolling out in a couple months and have greater accessibility to those on street spaces that are oftentimes or in the past had been prohibited by public safety.
Sam, you had mentioned you have a city planning background. So generally speaking here, in terms of places where you're seeing visitors maybe not having enough parking that they would like, are there other things that come to mind as solutions for you? How are you feeling about this project as a whole?
So I definitely applaud the city for moving, towards, in technology versus, just like old-fashioned quarters and meters. So that's a smart move, and I trust city planning to do the right thing with that technology and use it strategically. And again, the goal is to always make Cleveland as business friendly and as people, human friendly as possible. And I think with this parking technology, we can advance that in a very positive way.
Matt, has the city been considering how to make sure enforcement and pricing and the way this is rolled out doesn't disproportionately affect lower income residents and people without access to the mobile payment apps, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like Lucas mentioned, there are several ways you can pay. You can also pay just on a normal cell phone. There's numbers you can call on the signage as well. So we have much more variety of options to pay other than, again, still accepting cash and coin. But on that note, too, I want to emphasize, too, that a lot of Clevelanders don't have a car. It's roughly a quarter of households in the city don't have access to a vehicle. 70% of households either have no car or only one car available. So a majority of our residents are taking a non-car trip at some point. I'll also mention, too, that roughly 1 in 5 Clevelanders are under the age of 16. They can't get a license and drive. And so we have a lot of people in our city that move around without driving. And so it's important for us to not just with street parking itself, but curb management in general, as it's known, in terms of how we address where people can park, where people aren't, and just as importantly, where people can't park in places like crosswalks, double parking, things like that, so the streets remain safe for all road users. Again, we have been collecting crash data ever since, for a long time, but really in earnest with regards to our Vision Zero initiative to reduce traffic deaths and serious injuries to zero. Oftentimes, when there's a pedestrian-involved crash on busy streets, it can be because the driver can't see that pedestrian because the crosswalk is obscured or they're walking out between parked cars. And so those types of changes are all part of this. It's all connected in terms of how we're looking at these challenges and the steps we can take as a city to address them.
Now, do either of you know the answer to this question, Matt or Lucas? How many of these spaces, I know they're not meters because we don't have the physical meters there anymore, but how many parking spaces are there right now that are paid spots in downtown Cleveland, Ohio City area? Ballpark, any idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something we're still actively cataloging because, again, a lot of these systems, we don't really have what this transition represents is a transition to a digital system. And so, again, what other cities have done is that they know per zone how many spaces are in there. And so that's work we're actively doing is to catalog the number of spaces. I don't have a total number for you right now. It's a lot. We have quite a few downtown. We do know that downtown there's about 33,000 off-street parking spaces. And so there's ample parking downtown. It's just a matter of is it priced equitably? Is it priced effectively? Again, effective being defined as is it available for people? But we'd be happy to follow up once we have that data available, and it'll be published online on our open data portal.
I would be interested to know. So when you let us know that, I will share it on Instagram. You'll be able to find it on the Sound of Ideas. Just out of curiosity.
I'm literally going out there and counting spaces. So give me some
appreciate it.
time. Yeah.
That's what we call bootstrap journalism.
That's right.
Matt, that's what we call that. Matt, staying with you for a minute, the city announced plans to install about 40 new cameras downtown that will have the ability to automatically issue parking citations to drivers. So tell us about the status of that project and the goal there.
Yeah, like Lucas mentioned earlier, we're working on legislation for that special revenue fund for parking meters. That'll be it'll be a separate ordinance, but tied with that as well is legislation that will allow us to issue tickets and enforce parking rules and just stopping rules in general for vehicles in downtown and across the city using this technology. And I know the emphasis is on the enforcement side of things, but this is a tool, again, it sort of fits into that broader umbrella of curb management. We've seen other cities like, again, Pittsburgh, Miami, Philadelphia, we're following their lead in terms of how they've implemented similar programs. And it's mainly to do two things. We see and have observed, especially downtown, like on Euclid Avenue, for example, double parking, illegal parking. This not only it makes it harder for people to navigate in a car downtown, it's unsafe, it's riskier for pedestrians in that environment. And on the flip side, we've also heard from food delivery drivers, Uber, Lyft drivers, people who interact with those systems too to get around downtown, that it's difficult for them to find a space or know where to go. And so they end up double parking, they end up parking illegally just in order to get to the curb for a couple minutes at a time. And so what we do now is we sign parts of the curb. This is a loading zone and it's always a loading zone, or this is street parking and it's always street parking. But what we know from talking to businesses, from collecting observational data, is that we only need that loading activity typically happens in the morning, or Ubers and Lyfts are active when bars and restaurants are open in the evenings. And so what this technology will let us do is create curb space where people can get to the curb for a couple minutes at a time for whatever reason, whether they're picking up a lunch order or picking up someone who's requesting a ride share. Because right now that space is not available, or it's very limited. And so we can better manage that curb space in time rather than in space. And as we make changes to downtown and neighborhoods to provide the mobility options that people want, we have to be smarter and more effective about how we manage that through time. And so the technology is primarily meant to create more convenience and accessibility to the curb. But in order to do that, we need to be able to enforce it. And we need to be able to tell people, this is how this curb is being managed, and we're trying to set expectations in terms of how behavior happens at the curb, and we have to be able to enforce that.
So as you were talking about those smart loading zones there, those zones that are not available for parking but only loading at a certain time, how do you put residents and drivers on notice of that then, if there's no physical meter there that says no parking right now?
Yeah, and so and I think I'll do my public works colleagues some service here if I can, which is there's a phrase they use called sign clutter. And so it may be less so in cities like Cleveland, but if you go to a city like New York or Chicago and you try to interpret all those signs that are on the signpost, it's like, what the heck do I do here? One thing that this Park Mobile system lets us do is really clean that up and have fewer signs. And so that lets us more effectively put signs up that, again, tell people what to expect and what that curb space can be used for at whatever the time of day it is. And so this rolling out Park Mobile allows us to reduce the number of signs we have out on streets, which again makes it more effective to better notify and designate curb space for whatever use we might want or need.
Okay, Sam, you were responding positively to that. You think that's a good thing?
For sure. Like yeah, speaking of like visual clutter in the urban environment, you see billboards cluttering up the visual environment, sign clutter. So I definitely applaud moving as we move towards a digital parking management system. It's a smart movement, but it also gives us the opportunity to like remove a lot of this like visual clutter.
Okay. Lucas, I want to ask you on the topic of new technology. It's been a couple years now that we've had Park Mobile and the smart meters. What kind of feedback are you getting from people? Is there any negative feedback, or is it mostly positive?
I would say mostly positive. I use it myself all the time. I think it's incredibly convenient. I think if there's any feedback we get, it's typically folks that are just challenged to use the app and want to pay in a more traditional method, which is why having those pay stations available is incredibly important for them to have a robust number of those pay stations available close by to where folks are parking and in a way that's comfortable for them to use. We recognize that folks are paying by cash, and so having the ability for them to put coins into one of those pay stations is, from an equity perspective, incredibly important to us. But I think generally, from a user perspective, folks are very comfortable with the Park Mobile app. They've been using it with great frequency, and we've obviously been studying what other cities are doing across the country, and certainly many other cities cities have moved to some type of app-based parking payment system, and it seems to be working really well. So I think we're really happy with the Park Mobile rollout and looking even beyond where Park Mobile has been implemented currently to think about how we can roll that out across larger sections of the city that are currently using those old-fashioned coin meters.
Okay. As we start to wrap this up here, Sam, I'll ask you, is there anything else you think that we should consider on this topic or anything you'd like to share as a business owner in one of the spaces where these changes are happening?
Am I allowed to talk about the business community opposing the bus-only lanes on West 25th Street?
You know what?
I know that'll be a topic for another.
I do definitely want to have that conversation, so we will get into that for sure on a future episode here. But we thank you for participating in this panel. And as we wrap this up, Matt, I will ask you if there are unintended negative consequences. Does the city have a plan for how to adjust since it seems to be a very adaptable system that's been put in place?
Yeah, absolutely. And the ways we're doing that are, again, monitoring the activity itself through Park Mobile and all the information we're getting in terms of where people are parking, when they're parking. We're getting more sophisticated every day in terms of how we manage that. We also have a feedback form up on our website. If you go to clevelandohio.gov/street parking, we've already started getting, I think we put that up late last week, and we've already started getting some feedback. And so we want to hear from people, tell us what's working, what isn't working. Positive comments are always nice, but tell us where the pain points are, and we'll that's, I think, what feels really new and feels really innovative, and again is what Mayor Bibb has really been pushing us and others at City Hall to do, is to be adaptive, to be flexible. That's the kind of modern city government we're looking to provide to residents as we move forward.
Okay. And final question for Lucas here before we go. When we mentioned the dynamic pricing and the event pricing, you said $8. Is that a maximum? Is that something that people can count on, or could it potentially be more than that?
No, I think that's going to be the max for us, and in those particular zones, we'll have the ability for folks to extend even beyond 4 hours. So, if you're at a Guardians game and it goes into extra innings, you don't need to worry about it.
Right.
Or if you want to head out to East Fourth and grab dinner, that's entirely possible too. So, yeah.
Okay, we know those Guardians are good for going into extra innings, and it usually turns out in our favor. So I think we could see more of that, and that would be a good thing for everybody. All right, I want to thank you all for your time here today. We have Matt Moss, Senior Strategist of Thriving Communities with the City of Cleveland. Thanks for being here, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Lucas Reeve, Senior Advisor with the City of Cleveland. Lucas, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
And Sam McNulty, owner of Market Garden Brewery and Nano Brew Cleveland. Sam, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
We'll take a break now, and when we come back, we'll learn about a historic speech given by abolitionist Frederick Douglass ahead of his descendant coming to Hudson to visit the spot where that speech was made in 1854, which is a speech that still resonates today. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. We'll be right back. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you very much for staying with us. The power of education and the ability of young people to reshape the world were among the broader themes of an historic commencement speech that was delivered by abolitionist Frederick Douglass in Hudson in 1854 at what was then known as Western Reserve College. The speech, titled "The Claims of the Negro Ethnologically Considered," sharply debunked so-called scientific racism, the belief that different racial and ethnic groups have innately differing levels of physical, intellectual, and moral development that distinguish them as superior or inferior. It received renewed attention last year when an award-winning documentary called Just and Perfect involved current students reciting portions of the speech. Here's a small clip.
In truth, this question is at the bottom of the whole controversy now going on between the slaveholders on the one hand and the abolitionists on the other. It is the same old question which has divided the selfish from the philanthropic part of mankind in all ages. It is the question whether the rights, privileges, and immunities enjoyed by some ought not to be shared and enjoyed by all.
On Friday, the great-great-great-grandson of Douglass, Kenneth Morris Jr., is scheduled to visit the campus of what is now Western Reserve Academy, still in Hudson, to talk with present-day students in the place where Douglass delivered his speech. Now, we had initially planned to have Kenneth Morris on the show today, but he had to cancel due to illness. We do hope that he's feeling well and is up to that speech that will be happening there on Friday, that conversation. And we are very thankful that Cece Payne, the writer and producer of the film Just and Perfect, and Ayanna Graham Stefanum, the Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging for Western Reserve Academy, have stepped in to talk about Douglas's historic speech, the film, and how the speech still connects to students today. So we'd like to welcome them to the show. Cece, welcome to the show.
Hi, Stephanie. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. And Ayanna, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Of course, pleasure is mine.
Now, if you would like to join the conversation, you can call us at 866-578-0903, and you can email us at soi@ideastream.org or send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, Cece, the speech by Douglas in Hudson has received new interest because of the film. What drew you to that as a film subject?
Yeah, so Western Reserve Academy is gearing up to, or not even gearing up, at this moment we are in the midst of celebrating our 200th anniversary as a school. It is our bicentennial year. And so as we were preparing for this year, the community pulled some heads together and had a conversation and just said, what are the moments in our 200 years of history that we feel so particularly proud of? And there was a resounding attention to this moment where Frederick Douglass came to our campus in 1854. And as a community, we felt that we would be remiss to not take a moment to pause and revisit that speech as a community and use the anniversary as a moment to bring the speech into a bit more of a spotlight. As you mentioned, Stephanie, there are themes in the speech that are still relevant today. And so it was a great opportunity for us to take another opportunity, just as the students had done in 1854, to platform Douglass and his ideas to a broader audience. And it ended up being an incredible project. It was great to be able to work with students on it who themselves were really excited about the topic and the opportunity to bring it to a new audience. So that's kind of the story of how that all came to be.
And Cece, how did you first become aware of the speech that happened at that spot in Hudson in 1854? Was that through your work with the Western Reserve Academy?
Yes, it was actually. So I joined the Western Reserve Academy community about 4 years ago as an English teacher. And walking through the campus, I forget who exactly it was, but they were telling me a little bit about the story of Frederick Douglass coming to campus in 1854. And as an African-American studies major and an American studies major, I was so wowed by that for so many reasons. I thought to have been here in 1854, considering what was going on in the nation at that time, was just so profound. And it was a story that I had always been so fond of. It had made me have so much reverence for the community and just thinking about what kind of place this must have been to have been willing to make a decision like that back then.
And bringing it into present day, Cece, having the students read the excerpts from the speech. We just saw that short clip there, which was very powerful. How did you decide on that as a way to bring the speech to life here in the current day? And I'm wondering if the students helped select the excerpts.
Oh, that's a great question. So that came about just from me sitting a bit with the original story itself. One of the most interesting wrinkles of this story to me was the fact that Douglass's presence happened because students themselves had asked for him to be on campus. Back in 1854, when Western Reserve Academy was Western Reserve College, we had these literary societies who were really committed to promoting open dialogue on campus. And so the students themselves had been the ones to reach out to Douglass and invite him to campus. And so it felt as though now in the year 2025, when we were working on this, it made sense to have students be the ones bringing these words to life again. And so the students didn't help me with selecting the excerpts. To that, I actually have to give a ton of credit to Michael Johnson, who is a member of our Board of Trustees here at Western Reserve Academy. He's a proud alum of Western Reserve Academy himself, and something that he's always been really proud of was the Douglass story. And so he was an immense help in going through the speech, which is 2 hours long originally, to identify some excerpts that we thought were particularly meaningful for people.
Now, Ayana, the film, of course, gives the speech new life with having the students recite those experts. And also having Douglas's great 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 grandson, Kenneth Morris, on campus later this week can further bring those words into the present day. Ayana, what is it that you're hoping students take from that event on Friday?
Hmm. Another great question. I think just zooming out and thinking from a bird's eye view, when I do this work and I collaborate with a number of people on campus for this, when we bring speakers to campus, I'm hoping that our speakers reach our students. I think today we're just seeing a time where we're consuming so much all the time so quickly, and our phones are competing for our attention all the time. And so bringing a speaker in, I'm always hoping that they will connect with the students and really teach them just the relevance of history and just the importance of being engaged citizens of the world. And so the film does a really great job of making that story feel relevant and has brought new life to the campus and its history. And so I'm hoping just with bringing Kenneth B. Morris to campus that that adds an additional layer to it and allows students to understand that we are all a part of history and it's living and breathing. And there are people who are still alive today and related to those who have done these great, powerful things. And I'm hoping, honestly, that it will inspire them to think about the voices that they have and their power to be change makers today. So that's really my hope.
Ayana, do you have any idea what you expect Kenneth Morris to say, what the substance of his conversation will be with the students?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit. We did a Zoom call, and there was a few of us on it beforehand just to talk through some ideas. We always want to make sure that our speakers have an understanding of the context of our school and our students. And what's very interesting about Kenneth, and he is a descendant of both Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington, which was something that we just randomly found out through our research, which is super cool. But he actually spoke a lot about wanting to also highlight the contributions of the women in his family who, he says that, Frederick Douglass would not be who Frederick Douglass is today without the support of his wife. And just there are a number of women that he spoke about wanting to also highlight the stories of. And so he's going to be delivering a presentation that really talks about, I think he quoted part of the title, The Power of One. And so I'm imagining that with his remarks that he will, touch base a little bit on that and really give a holistic picture of Douglass and those who supported the work that he did.
Now, Cece, that 1854 speech by Frederick Douglass and Hudson, it was incredibly groundbreaking for his era. Can you tell us a little bit about what made it so special in that moment?
Yes, I can. So in that era, what particularly stands out to me is that the nation was, I don't, I would say, kind of building towards the Civil War. 1854, in the month of May, actually, so 2 months before Frederick Douglass had arrived in Hudson, the Kansas-Nebraska Act had been signed, and that actually was going to pave the way for the legalization of the expansion of slavery westward. And so, 2 months after that act is signed into law, Frederick Douglass comes to campus, and he really wants to address the fact that while, the nation is at this moment where access to education and information is more than it might have been prior, he's trying to make it clear to the students that they, as educated citizens, have a responsibility with that education to make sure that they're not using it to justify the harm that's being done to a group of people in the United States. And so that was one of the moments that we really just wanted to lay clear for people, was understanding the stakes that Douglass was confronting with the Kansas-Nebraska Act becoming a new part of the way that the nation was running.
Cece, the film has been collecting awards last year at the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival, and it's been included in the 2026 Black History Film Festival. So, can you talk about that and what that means for this film and the students involved?
Oh, absolutely. Getting selected for the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival was an immense honor. Our students were really excited about it, especially because it is a local festival. I was able to take two of them with me for the premiere, and that was definitely a highlight of the two of their senior years for sure. When we set out to make this film, as much as it was a moment to commemorate and celebrate a milestone in our school's history, more than that, it was a moment to make sure that there is a new national audience for the content of the speech itself. And so it's been incredibly rewarding to see it be picked up on the film festival circuit and be getting these amazing opportunities to share the message with broader audiences. Like you mentioned, we just found out about being selected for the Black History Film Festival this year, which we're really excited about, particularly because it's a multi-city festival. So we'll get to screen the film in Miami, in Oakland, California, in Washington, D.C., and in Atlanta in February, which is really exciting for us now, looking about getting this film even broader than Ohio and getting it in front of some new eyes.
I want to let people know, for those just joining us, that we are having a conversation about an historic speech that was delivered by Frederick Douglass in Hudson in 1854. We're talking with filmmaker Cece Payne about the film Just and Perfect, which has students from the area reciting excerpts from that speech. We also have Ayanna Graham-Sifanum with us from the Western Reserve Academy, and we are talking about an event that's happening on Friday with a direct descendant of Frederick Douglass. Kenneth Morris will be here speaking in honor of that speech having taken place in 1854 here in Hudson. If you want to be a part of the conversation, the number is 866-578-0903, and the email is soi@ideastream.org. Ayanna, has the film reinvigorated interest in the work of Frederick Douglass beyond the 1854 speech in Hudson from what you're seeing?
I definitely think so. It has just been great for our community. Like I mentioned before, just it's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to get to relive it and experience it through the words of our students. And they performed the speech so passionately. And as Cece mentioned, two of those students are current seniors and the other two graduated last year. But the two seniors who were part of the film, they have just brought a lot of just life and passion into the school this year and are just excited to just be more engaged with the history and with this work and engage their peers. And I think the same would also be the same for our faculty as well. And so we're a pretty tight-knit community. We're a pretty small school. And I think the power of the film has definitely reverberated throughout it.
We'd like to play another clip from Just and Perfect at the end with a montage of students. So let's see that clip now.
Born as I was, in obscurity, a stranger to the halls of learning, environed by ignorance, degradation, and their concomitants, from birth to manhood. I do not feel at liberty
to mark out with any degree of confidence or dogmatism what is the precise vocation of the scholar. Yet this I can say,
As a denizen of the world, and as a citizen of a country rolling in the sin and shame of slavery, the most flagrant and scandalous that ever saw the sun.
Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest,
whatsoever things are just,
whatsoever things are pure,
whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good rapport, and if there be any virtue,
and if there be any praise,
think on these things.
Think on these things.
Think on these things.
Think on these things.
Again, that was a clip from the documentary Just and Perfect, a section of the speech extolling the power of education and calling on scholars to reject divisive so-called scientific theories. That was from the speech of Frederick Douglass delivered in Hudson in 1854. And I want to thank our guests for being with us today. We had Cece Payne with us here on the phone, film creator. Cece, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely, Stephanie. Thanks so much for having me.
And also Ayana Graham Stefanum, Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Belonging at the Western Reserve Academy. Ayana, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Stephanie. It was such a pleasure.
If you'd like to get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org and find us on Instagram. We're at The Sound of Ideas. Tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we'll examine how faith-based advocacy shapes Ohio law. This is after the City Club hosted a forum last Friday with the leader of the Center for Christian Virtue, which prompted criticism from members of the LGBTQ+ community here in Northeast Ohio. If you missed any part of today's show, you can listen to The Sound of Ideas wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch the show on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page. You can also hear a rebroadcast of today's show tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you very much for keeping the conversation going. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas.